The cowboy was looking for a maid. The Apache woman said, "I came to be your wife." Everything changed that night. In the rolling plains of the West, where the earth stretched for miles and the sun beat down with unyielding heat, a cowboy named Luke was on a mission. He had recently purchased a piece of land, a small ranch that required more than just tending to the cattle. It needed someone to care for the house, cook meals, and take care of the many chores that came with such an undertaking. His days were long, spent mending fences, rounding up cattle, and working the fields, but his nights were spent in solitude, eating lonely meals and listening to the wind howl through the cracks in his log cabin. The cowboy needed help, but more than that, he craved companionship. Luke had known of the local Apache tribe, who lived in the foothills, a few days' ride from his land. He had heard stories of their strength, their customs, and their fierce loyalty to their people. His encounters with them had always been brief, but he had never truly understood their way of life. He'd heard rumors that an Apache woman could be hired to work for a rancher, an unusual proposition, but one that intrigued him. So after much thought, he decided to visit their camp. One scorching afternoon, Luke saddled up his horse and rode through the valley, making his way toward the Apache tribe's settlement. The wind was dry, and the landscape seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. As he approached their camp, he saw several women working by the fire, preparing food, and children playing in the shade of the nearby trees. He slowed his horse, feeling out of place in the midst of such a proud and ancient people. He had a mission to complete, but his nerves were growing. It wasn't long before an elder from the tribe approached him. She eyed him carefully but with respect. "You seek something?" she asked in a voice as dry as the desert winds. "I need help," Luke said simply, unsure of how to phrase his request. "I have land, a ranch, and I need someone to care for it. I've heard that a maid from your tribe might help me." The elder smiled faintly. "A maid, that is not what we offer. But a woman may help if she sees the need." She paused, studying his face. "If you want help, you must understand that our women do not serve. They stand beside." Luke nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her words. "I just need someone to look after the place," he said. "I've no one but myself out there." The elder nodded again, this time more solemnly. "I will send someone to you, but you must be ready to understand." That evening, Luke returned to his cabin, his thoughts swirling. What had he truly asked for? Was he seeking a servant, or was he seeking something deeper? The evening stretched on, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. The next day, just after dawn, there was a knock at the door. Luke opened it to find a young Apache woman standing there. She was taller than he expected, her skin a warm, sun-kissed brown. Her long black hair was braided, and she wore a simple yet striking buckskin dress. Her eyes, dark as night, looked straight into his with an intensity that unsettled him. "I came to be your wife," she said, her voice calm but certain. Luke stood frozen for a moment. He had expected someone to come and help him with the ranch, not a woman proclaiming herself as his wife. His mind raced as he processed her words. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. The woman's expression didn't change. "I was sent to you," she replied. "Your need is not for a maid. It is for a partner. A woman who can help you build your life and protect what you have." Luke opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He wasn't sure if he was more confused or intrigued. This was not the answer he had expected. He had sought someone to cook, to clean, to care for the house. But this woman, this Apache woman, had a different vision. I don't understand," Luke stammered. "You will," she said simply. "But first you must accept what I offer." Luke stood frozen at the door, staring at the woman who had boldly declared herself as his wife. She was not what he had expected. She was tall, her presence commanding despite her calm demeanor. Her dress, made of tan buckskin, was simple yet striking, adorned with intricate beadwork and leather fringe, a reminder of the deep connection she had with her people. Her dark eyes locked onto his, filled with quiet strength and certainty. He had sought a maid for his ranch, someone to help with the chores, but instead, he had found a woman who seemed to offer much more. "I didn't ask for this," Luke finally said, though his words were more for himself than for her. "I just need help around the house." Ayanna, the Apache woman, didn't flinch at his confusion. She simply nodded, her gaze unwavering. "What you need is not help. It is a partner," she said softly, yet with conviction. "I have come to be by your side, to stand with you, not to serve you." Luke took a step back, still unsure of what to do. "I don't know what you mean. I'm not looking for a wife." Ayanna didn't seem surprised by his reaction. "You don't yet know what you need," she replied gently, yet firmly. "But you will." In time you will see. Luke stood there in silence, the weight of her words sinking in. He had come to the Apache camp seeking help with his ranch, but he hadn't expected this. He wasn't ready for a relationship, for the responsibility that came with a partner. He had lived alone for so long, tending to the land and animals by himself. He wasn't sure he wanted to change that, but something in Ayana's presence made him hesitate. There was a quiet power in her, a strength that demanded respect, and though it unsettled him, it also drew him in. "Why me?" he asked after a long pause. "Why did you choose to come here?" Ayana took a step closer, her expression softening, though her eyes still held that unwavering intensity. "Because your heart is lonely," she said simply. "You seek something more than just work. You seek companionship, understanding, a life worth building." Luke felt a pang in his chest, a truth that he had never fully acknowledged before. He had spent years working, keeping himself busy with the ranch, filling his time with tasks to keep the loneliness at bay. But in the quiet moments when the sun set and the stars came out, he realized that what he longed for most wasn't the solitude or the land, it was someone to share it with. Still, the idea of a woman, especially one from the Apache tribe, entering his life in such a bold way, unsettled him. He didn't understand their customs or their ways. He didn't know if he could truly live alongside her, let alone build a life together. He had no idea what he was getting himself into. But Ayana didn't wait for him to decide. She stepped inside the cabin, looking around with quiet assessment. Her gaze lingered on the fire, the simple furnishings, and the empty space that seemed to echo with the weight of his solitary existence. "I will stay here," she said, "and I will help you." Luke opened his mouth to protest, but the words didn't come. He had asked for help after all. And what if there was more to this than he understood? What if this woman, who seemed so certain in her purpose, truly had something to offer him? For the next few days, Ayana made herself useful, taking on tasks around the ranch with ease. She cooked meals with ingredients Luke had never thought to combine. She mended fences and tended to the animals, with a grace and skill that impressed him. She worked tirelessly, not because she was told to, but because it was in her nature to do so. She did not ask for praise, nor did she need it. She simply did what needed to be done. As the days passed, Luke began to see her in a new light. He watched her as she worked, saw how she moved with such quiet strength and confidence. She was no servant. She wasn't here to cater to his every whim. She was here as his equal, a partner in every sense of the word. One evening, after they had finished working for the day, Luke sat outside on the porch, watching the sun set over the horizon. Ayana sat beside him, her presence as comforting as the steady breeze that blew across the plains. The silence between them was not awkward, but peaceful. "I've been thinking," Luke began, his voice low and uncertain. "I've spent so many years alone, thinking that I just needed help with the ranch. But maybe what I've been missing all this time is someone to share it with, someone to build a life with." Ayana turned to him, her expression calm but knowing. "It is not just the land that you need to build," she said softly. "It is a life, a purpose, a woman who stands beside you, who helps you see what you cannot on your own." Luke looked at her, the weight of her words settling deep within him. She wasn't just offering to be his wife, she was offering to be his partner in every sense of the word, and he realized that he had already begun to trust her, to rely on her in ways he had never imagined. That night, as they sat beneath the stars, Luke felt a shift within himself. He had been seeking help, but what he had truly needed was something far more profound. He had needed someone to stand with him, to walk beside him as they built something together. And now, with Ayana by his side, he realized that everything had changed. The next morning, Luke stood in front of the cabin, his heart full of thoughts he had never allowed himself to consider before. Ayana stood beside him, her eyes calm and steady, her presence a quiet strength he had come to rely on. The wind swept across the plains, and for the first time in years, Luke didn't feel alone. "I accept what you offer," he said quietly, his voice steady. "Not just the help, but everything. A partner, a life together." Ayana's gaze softened and she nodded, her expression filled with quiet satisfaction. "You have taken the first step," she said. "Now we build." And with that, everything changed. The life Luke had known, the solitary existence on the ranch, became something new. Together, they would face the challenges that lay ahead, not as master and servant, but as equals, as partners. And Luke knew deep in his heart that this was just the beginning of something greater than he could have ever imagined.